would spend time outside hiking, going to great heights, and you're really stimulating this on a physical body level, but energetically you are stimulating your connection to higher worlds, higher chakras, and opening up to that of the chakras of the third eye and the crown. I would say this element out of all the elements is very fast and very quick evolving and very expansive. Hey, and welcome back to our Elemental Rituals series. This is the last episode, the 4th episode in this series, where we go through the 4 elements of Gaia. So we're now up to the air element. If you haven't watched the last 3 episodes, I highly recommend you go through and watch those before watching this one, just so you have a bit of context. If not, I have this next slide. You can screenshot it, pause this video, take it in, just so you have a bit of context of where we're coming from, the viewpoint we're coming from here at Somatic Body when I'm talking about the 4 elements and the 4 rituals, because there are other elements within cultures and traditions out there, and we need to acknowledge that, but these are the ones we're looking at when we're working with them in Somatic Body. Throughout my Feminine Harmony program, throughout one-on-one sessions, you'll already be familiar if you're in the program and you've done the lesson on Gaia, or if you've done a one-on-one session with me, you'll have seen these 4 elements in the personalized PDF that I give you after every session. So if you're not familiar, feel free to pause, take a screenshot, take this in. Otherwise, we will move into the air elements. So the air element has more of a frequency of the masculine archetype. It's not that it doesn't have the feminine archetype within it as its essence, within its potent medicine. I do believe that everything out there collectively has this energetic exchange, and there will always be an aspect of masculine and feminine within every body and everything. However, when it comes to the 4 elements, the air element and the fire element are our more masculine elements out of the 4. And I've come to know that the fire and water elements are our peak of these. So like the fire is the most masculine and carries the most masculine essence when we work with it. The water element carries the most feminine. And then we have the earth element a little more feminine than masculine, and the air a little more masculine than feminine. And so what does this mean when I talk about this? When we're working with the air element, for example, and it's slightly more masculine, we're talking about it ruling that of our consciousness. The masculine is the more logic, more action, the more doing, the more proactive, momentum-based essence when we're talking about a masculine archetype. So when we're looking at air and its medicinal properties, or its properties when we're working with it, air can be used for insights, knowledge, concept, clarity, connectedness, curiosity, intelligence, communication. So it's all very much mental body and intellect and consciousness, which is like that of a higher frequency, that of a more masculine-minded, consciousness. And so we're working with more of a masculine archetype in that way. When we work with air, we are working more with, for example, the breath and visualization practices and bringing real clarity to the mind, how it gains insights, the perceptions it has, the openness that it provides for us when we're wanting to extrovert. So when we're working with masculine energy, we're working with more of an outward energy, how we open up to others, how we extrovert. When we're working with a femininity, we're coming back into our inner world. We're coming back into the softness, the emotions. Masculine, it's more the logic. How do I relate to everyone? And there are many different ways to work with air. We have breath work. We have wind directions as well, north, south, east, west, and all between, all the transits. We have the weather events that happen around us. When we talk about a storm, I talked about a storm in the water episode, 2 episodes prior, and how the water element comes in with the waves in a storm. The same thing happens with the air element when we're talking about a storm. It comes with this kind of momentum and almost restlessness, but then there's also these moments of stillness on a beautiful clear day. And so we're working with the air element. We are working with that of a more, I don't want to say flighty, but a more fast-paced, ever-evolving, open energy, a very high upper world energy. Whereas when we're working with that of the earth element, we're working with a very low, very slow, very grounded energy. It's kind of like the opposite areas, like the opposite of earth. And then we have fire being the opposite of water, where it's like fire is the most potent masculine energy and water is the most feminine energy. And they're opposites, but they also work in this dynamic duo. And so does air and earth as well. When we think about, the element of earth and trees, they reoxygenate the air, and so they really work together even though they're kind of opposites. And it's all interconnected when we think about it, because then water comes in and feeds the plants, and then the sun helps the plants grow. all interconnected, all interchangeable. And so yes, when we're working with the element of air, we are working with properties that aid us in expansion of knowledge, really opening our eyes, keeping ourselves open-minded, open-hearted. We're working with the seasons of change. So, when wind changes direction, we're working with that fast adaptation, that fast moving element of air. So like being prepared to shift and evolve in a very light-hearted way. I would say this element out of all the elements is very fast and very quick evolving and very expansive. Fire is not far off it. We talked about how momentum builds in fire as well, but air as well, especially. And then we have that more gentle momentum of the water, and then that real still slowness of the earth. So when we start to bring the air element into practice, we can use breath work. I mean, that's kind of the most obvious one. If you haven't experienced breath work, you can start with the simple 4 and 6 breath work. I've got a video on that one as well, so you can also look into that. It's under one of my somatic practice playlists here on YouTube, and you can start working with that if you're very new to breath work. It's a really nice foundational start. Then we also have scent immersions. So this is where you can use the smell through the breath, but you can use the sense of smell in the air to work with the air element. And then we have altitude immersion, which is where we go up higher. So this is where I was talking about the air element being very upper world. We can literally go on a hike. And yes, we are combining that with the element of the earth. So when we're working with breath work, this is where you can use controlled breathing patterns or techniques to stimulate the nervous system in the physical body, but also to stimulate the way our mental body, the chemistry of the physical body, and how this impacts our mental body. And so we've got things like the 4 to 6 count breath I was talking about. We've got box breathing, which is where you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold, and then keep going. That's also a really simple breath practice to begin. I would just suggest not doing box breathing if you are pregnant or you think you are pregnant, because it's not great to hold your breath when you're pregnant. I'm actually not sure why, but look into that. And if it doesn't feel right for you, don't do it. Yeah. Even if you're not pregnant, just do what feels right for you always. Then we have alternate nostril breathing, which is where we come back to the regulation of the nervous system. Alternate nostril breathing is where we would breathe through one nostril, hold, breathe out the other, and then keep alternating. With alternate nostril breathing, we are stimulating different sides of the brain. And also, when we notice one nostril is blocked compared to the other, we can actually not only alternate nostril breathing, but focus on that one nostril and breathe in and out through that one until it feels clear. This stimulates the opposite side of the brain. So when we're working with the right nostril, we're working with the left side of the brain, and vice versa. This is also, when we talk about the brain, we're talking about the left and right sides being masculine and feminine, or parasympathetic and sympathetic. So we can actually tell with nostril breathing and working with air what state our body is in. If we're feeling dissociated and disconnected from our body and we're not sure why, we can actually do a little check and see which nostril is most blocked. Obviously, if you have a cold or hay fever, this is going to hinder that little test. But if you're feeling quite dissociated, I like alternate nostril breathing as a means to come back. It's almost like a somatic practice that helps us drop back into our body. And it's also a little nervous system check. If our right nostril's blocked, okay, my sympathetic nervous system is dominant right now. I'm in fight or flight. And that's why I'm feeling a little disconnected or a little dissociated. Or the next day you could go, okay, left nostril's a little blocked, which means I'm feeling a little sluggish or a little bit more in that parasympathetic state to the point where there's stagnation, right? So it's like this overbalance of one side of the nervous system versus the other. It's good to have both clear so you're balanced and regulated. Then we have sense immersion, which I mentioned earlier, and this is where you can use the sense, whether it's essential oils, going into the garden, smelling flowers, earth element really comes in here, but just activating, again, the nervous system, the sense of smell, and working with the air in this way. You can use incense bars, incense sticks. I'm more of a fan of bars because I did my research and that's just the conclusion I came to, but use whatever you want. And you can also use a diffuser for your essential oils. So that's an example of how you can work with sense immersions and how you can use them in ritual too. So you can bring this in as a little almost like side dish. It's like what accents the ritual when you're setting up for a practice is the scent immersion. I really do love it. I love bringing it into the fire element as well and having a scented candle, for example. Then we have altitude immersion, which is where you would spend time outside hiking, going to great heights, and you're really stimulating this on a physical body level. But energetically, you are stimulating your connection to higher worlds, higher chakras, and opening up to that of the chakras of the third eye and the crown. So you can work with the air element in a very spiritual way as well. Then you can also physically not only do a hike or whatever, you can also do cardio and base it in your very much like grounded in a physical element as well. Because the air element, again, it's more flighty, it's more upper world, it's more like out of body experience. But when we tap that into breath work, so whether it's through cardio, so connecting to the body through breath, or whether we're doing more of a controlled breath work where we're doing a guided breath work, this is what helps us to, in a sense, ground the element while we're working with it. It's the same with sense immersions when we're smudging. It's a very grounded way of working with the air element, because we're not only working with the air element when it comes to smudging, for example, we're using that of the earth element to help ground us. It's like a way of rebalancing those polar opposite elements so that you can work with them in a way, especially if you're someone like me who's a Taurus sun, so like my star sign is Taurus, I somewhat need that element of earth to help ground me when I'm working with the earth element. Otherwise it gets a little too overwhelming for me. So these are the ways you can work with the air element. And as I've said in the previous 4 episodes, whenever you're working within ritual, no matter what it is, if it's manifesting, setting intention, creating devotion to something, someone, or a situation, always make sure that you're taking that next step as well to really instill and honor the ritual and the practice in itself. However big, however small that step is, just doing what feels right for you and honoring that, and really just embracing the slight discomfort or the slight momentum and change that comes with wanting to grow, wanting to transmute, wanting to transform. At the end of the day, when we do ritual, there is a real purpose behind it, whether it's to go into stillness and ground, whether it's to create a change, to create momentum. So taking that next step is always super important, even if that next step is to devote yourself to stillness every day, for example. So that's everything. I hope you've enjoyed this series, and let me know in the comments below what you think of this series now that you've finished. And if you want to learn something more, something new, something similar, also comment below, let me know so I can know what to bring to you guys next.